Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy, and I'll be hosting today's show. On the hazardous weather graphics, they are all blank today. No watches, no warnings, no advisories anywhere in the state now, and probably through tomorrow as well. So really, that means high pressure holding over the area. Now we have weak frontal boundary up here on the satellite showing up along the Arctic coast, much weaker than it was yesterday, with the main storm now pulling off over the northern Canadian islands there. But the front trailing back kept some snow going here on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast today. Pretty light, but some areas look like they picked about an inch equivalent there, with a tenth of an inch water equivalent being reported by one of the stations up there. And drying out, clearing out actually along the central Arctic coast this afternoon, with much lighter winds across the entire area today up there. Flurries on the west side, Point Leon down to roughly Cape Lisburne and Point Hope. And then high pressure over the interior here. You can see pushing northwestward, actually appears to be building northwestward and pushing that off to the northwest, holding this front in place there over the western Bering on down right across Adak, where rain fell the entire day, or just about constant for the last 24 hours, light rain. And we have this weak disturbance that on Thursday brought a few showers at Kodiak Island and kind of lingered around just south of the island yesterday, now is making a move and brought rain and showers to the Alaska Peninsula today, but amounts again generally under a tenth of an inch. And that's going to shift on up, bring a chance of moisture up to the southwest coast, especially Nunivak Island tonight and through tomorrow. Otherwise, sunshine over the interior today with light winds, and that extended right on down the Panhandle. The exception being the Lynn Canal area. They had small craft advisories there, and some of the islands reporting 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts today out of the north. And that should begin to diminish tomorrow somewhat. And light winds on down to the south with variable clouds, low clouds hanging right along the central coast there. Could be some fog as well. But that's about it. Otherwise, a pretty nice day there. Nice over the interior. Had some dense fog around St. Lawrence Island earlier today, and that lingered into the afternoon. Visibility's improved a little bit, so we had 0 for their visibility for a short time today, and that extended up in toward the Bering Strait. Otherwise, not too bad over the Seward Peninsula. Here's this upper level system caught up in the flow coming around with a big high over the interior, that southeast flow pulling it up to the northwest here, and that brought some light rain, or continued the light rain. Actually began yesterday afternoon along the southern coast of the Alaska Peninsula. That continued through today. Winds really not much, 15 to 25 miles an hour at the most in some areas there, and a few scattered showers into the Fox Islands. You can also see some clearing on the lee side of the islands there, and generally cloudy though from the Pribilofs on into the northern Bering Sea. This stationary front, I mentioned, bringing about 1.25 inches of precipitation to Adak. Still raining currently there. Winds coming down, continuing to weaken on the winds. Again, with this thing pulling northwestward, the low almost getting off the map now, and the front hung up down here. So rain will continue, as we'll see for tonight. Stays roughly stationary there. Winds no problem here, just isolated showers behind the front. Really isolated showers in front of the front here. As this upper level system pulls up, again, chance of rain or snow showers, mainly Nunivak Island, could be catching some of the coastal areas, but staying west of Bethel. And whatever falls anywhere there will be quite light. And southeast flow, moisture, that'll continue to keep it a little unsettled and damp for the Alaska Peninsula. Possibly as far up as Sitkinak or AKwx, but that's just a slight threat. Better chance of seeing some low clouds and fog developing tonight along the eastern side of Kodiak and into the Gulf. Also off the southeast coast, could see some fog and low clouds due to light wind conditions. That could also form over the inside waters again, possibly. Probably definitely not to the north of the wind you're seeing there, but those winds will be subsiding gradually. Otherwise, a couple of good, solid high pressure centers. One right over south central Alaska, the southern interior, the other one in the Yukon. And this front hung up, kind of stuck there between the high centers right along the North Slope area. So the central Arctic coast, you won't see anything from Wainwright over to, say, possibly Nuiqsut. Be dry with possible clearing, but off to the east, flurries, light snow, probably continue off and on most of the night for Kaktovik and Barter Island. And then flurries and mostly cloudy skies on the west side. Look for clearing in the Seward Peninsula. Chance of showers, as I mentioned, on the southwest coast. Moving ahead to tomorrow, Monday, high pressure holding over the interior right on down into the Gulf of Alaska and beyond. With Kodiak Island, hopefully mostly sunny skies after whatever fog forms burns off. Still same pattern, no change over the Panhandle except lighter winds for Lynn Canal in those areas there north of Stevens Passage. So it'll be a lighter wind day there. Should be mostly sunny, hopefully. Low clouds, fog, again, central coast. Hopefully won't move inland. And high pressure over the Arctic there. That's going to keep it dry, especially on the western Arctic coast with offshore flow, better conditions. But this front, lingering there on the east side, keeps light snow going the entire day. In fact, actually, that's going to begin to come southward as an upper level low comes around this high. And this system moves inland. There's going to be a pretty significant change coming up here this week, especially for the eastern interior into the Copper River Basin. As cold, pushy Arctic air comes southward, we'll see on Tuesday that comes southward, and there'll be a significant drop in temperatures up here over the northeast. And along the boundary, really not a lot of precipitation. Look for clouds and maybe flurries. Could get a little more steadier here toward Eagle as you head over toward the border into the White Mountains maybe, but definitely this will continue to come southward. And later in the week, Copper River Basin could see some snow by Thursday or so. Temperatures significantly dropping, maybe overnight lows falling even below zero there. Otherwise, maybe low clouds and fog for the Panhandle, mostly sunny in the afternoon. Sunny tomorrow afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, south central Alaska, and tomorrow afternoon. And a re-energized frontal boundary here picks the winds up and spreads the rain into the Alaska Peninsula on Tuesday. Right across the Pribilos, look for east winds. I think it'll stay under gale force. There'll probably be gale force winds here for the Alaska Peninsula, that orientation as one low pushes over toward Atka, and that'll stretch the gradient out, so it'll be wet again for Adak and Atka for another couple of days, but the winds will be quite lighter than they will be up along the frontal boundary. Also a wind increase out of the east here over the northern central Bering Sea as colder air begins to spill in later on, even up in that area. And for lows tonight, single numbers on the Arctic coast there, generally staying above zero, and teens in the Brooks Range, 20s, 20 to 30 south of the mountains, and lower to mid 30s again for Bristol Bay. Otherwise, south central Alaska, roughly about what we've seen, upper 20s to lower 30s. Most areas falling below freezing again tonight with the clear skies. And the Panhandle, quite a range there, anywhere from mid 20s to near 40, and that'll be the exception, probably mostly colder than that. Copper River Basin, mid-20s. And in the highs, Monday afternoon, see the cooling taking place up here, especially compared to yesterday on the Arctic coast, 10 to 15 for the highs, and teens working in toward the North Slope, but along the Brooks Range up there, upper 20s to lower 30s again, and then into the 30s to near 40s south of the mountains. Tanana Valley, another 45 to 52 degree day afternoon tomorrow, and 50 to 55 in Susitna Valley. Otherwise 40s to lower 50s for the remainder of south central Alaska. Upper 40s to lower 50s Bristol Bay, and another really nice day here, 55 to 65. About sums it up for the Panhandle. Sunshine, light winds, and near 40 for the Pribilos, 30 for St. Lawrence Island, and out in the Aleutians, the usual mid 30s to lower 40s. And going to the following morning lows. Now, edging a little below zero up here along the Arctic coast, 0 to 5 below for your lows, and even Arctic Village here dropping to -2, and still holding in the 20s. The front just to the north of Tanana Valley, so 25 to 30 for your lows there. No change south central Alaska, mostly in the mid to upper 20s. Lower to mid 30s out along the southwest coast, mid to upper 30s there for the Aleutians. And along the Panhandle, we're looking at, again, lows tonight, or lows 25 to maybe 40 degrees, warmest along the outer coast where you could have a little bit of a low cloud and fog condition thing going on. And then the highs Tuesday afternoon, single numbers up along the Arctic coast, 5 to 10 for your highs. lower teens into Anahtuvik Pass and probably Arctic Village as well. Highs near 40 for the Fairbanks area, and upper 40s Copper River Basin. Upper 40s, lower 50s South Central Alaska again, not too bad, and a little cooler here for the Panhandle, looking at mostly in the 50s to near 60, maybe 61 or 2 in some locations. And not much change out over the Bering Sea temperature-wise. Again, near 30 for St. Lawrence Island, 40 for the Pribilofs, lower 40s there for Adak and Atka.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Looking at the first flying weather graphic for Monday morning. Areas of IFR here. Well, one up here along the North Slope, another one St. Lawrence Island up to the South Coast Stewart Peninsula, Nome, maybe Golovin, and a couple more off to the southwest. Just barely some IFR over the west central Aleutians. VFR Bristol Bay, good VFR over the interior, right on down the southeast coast, including the Gulf of Alaska tomorrow afternoon. Lose the IFR in the North Slope, left over marginal stuff along and north of the Brooks Range, and nothing but VFR in the interior. VFR Kodiak Island, except right along the coast there, and Alaska Peninsula, some marginal VFR mostly on the south. Otherwise, VFR in Bristol Bay, IFR, the Aleutians, and Southwest Bering. Another batch up here to the northeast near St. Lawrence Island and down toward Nunivak Island. Outlook for Tuesday morning, increasing IFR here out over the Bering Sea, as well as the Aleutians, and IFR holding, but kind of pulling back a little bit there to the west, but into Norton Sound, up into the Bering Strait, but looks like it'll stay off the coast. VFR continues another day here in the interior. Marginal VFR yet, North Slope, but not quite out to the Arctic coast except over toward Kaktovik and Barter Island. VFR on down the Panhandle, and that continues through Tuesday afternoon as well. Southern Alaska VFR, and seeing some moisture now starting to develop with a system coming down, or actually one coming up from the Bering, linking up with one coming down to the north. So increasing marginal VFR along and north of the Alaska Range, also the White Mountains, maybe 40-mile country back to the west. Otherwise, north-south VFR, and Kodiak Island VFR, Bristol Bay looking really good. Look at the southwest coast, VFR halfway to the Pribilofs, IFR St. Lawrence Island, eastern Aleutians, and looks like mostly north of the central and western Aleutians. Freezing, or jumping ahead of myself, passes. Marginal VFR at times, possibly northern entrance there, otherwise VFR through the pass and to the south. That same pattern for Adigan as well. North of the pass, lower conditions may be into the northern entrance. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, good VFR tomorrow. Same thing for Rainy VFR. Windy VFR, one more day. And Isabel, same thing, VFR for Monday. Mentesta, VFR. Tenita looking really good, VFR for a couple more days. And Portage also looks like a couple more days of VFR flying there, as well as Chilkoot and White. For the freezing levels, upper level high pressure here, and this freezing level pattern signifies out 6,000 feet, 6,000 to 7,000 feet over the Yukon into the eastern southeast interior. 2,000 feet up to the Brooks Range there, and then 2,000 feet here for Kodiak Island, also out in the Bering Sea. And the surface north of St. Matthew Island tomorrow morning, inland over northern Bristol Bay, and up along the North Gulf Coast, and then down the eastern border of the Panhandle. Icing, none over the interior, none over the Panhandle, Arctic coast, Gulf of Alaska, icing free. Got a guy from about Nikolsky on west. Could be some areas of, or at least a chance of some isolated moderate rime icing there. The heavier stuff still to the south. Jet stream, big upper level high here, centered almost right on top of Yakutat tomorrow. And this upper level low a couple days ago was just south of Kodiak Island. It's coming across the Alaska Peninsula today, and it's going to take a turn in and then southeast again. It's going to link up with a upper trough digging southward up here. It's going to pull some colder air in by the middle of the week here into the interior, especially the Copper River Basin, and chances of snow also increase there as well. And for 9,000 feet for tomorrow, we've got southeast 25 here into Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula, 40 to 50 knots there over the Aleutians, out of the southeast, all the way back towards Chimney and Attu, but with this high ridge axis in here, light winds up to the northwest, and then you can already see this trough is getting ready to start digging southward. We've got 45 knot west-northwesterlies, 25 into the northeast interior, Panhandle light wind conditions. And for 3,000 feet, High center up here with the northwest interior, and other large one here in the Gulf of Alaska. Really light winds around that, up into the interior, just 5 to 10 knots, down into the panhandle, light winds. And at 3,000 feet, only picking up to 25 knots on the extreme eastern Arctic coast there. Southeast flow here on the west side of that ridge, 25 to 35 over the Alaska Peninsula and into the central Aleutians, picking up about 40 knots there. And turbulence shaping up like this, of course, with those winds, mechanical turbulence, moderate chop, pretty likely Alaska Peninsula, all the way out to Shimei and Attu. Smooth over the interior, smooth in the panhandle. Moderate chop, extreme eastern Arctic coast. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us today is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thank you for joining us, Eric.
My pleasure, Dave.
Thank you. And you're joining us here to talk a little bit more about satellites and how satellites work, and especially one neat feature that's working over Alaska right now. What is that?
Well, there's a lot of weather satellites and a lot of instruments on these satellites, and there are new generations going up and new instruments. This includes something called the day-night band, which is not a cover band at the local bar, but it's a new satellite that is very useful, especially here in Alaska, especially in the winter.
In the wintertime, yeah, that makes it a little bit hard to use some of the normal tools that we associate with weather satellite imagery.
Right. You know, one of the classic weather satellite instruments is just visible light. What would the human eye see if you were riding on a weather satellite yourself and looked down and it was black and white? You'd see the clouds reflecting the sunlight. And we've got an example from the Pacific Ocean. There's a geostationary satellite, and we can see that the eastern side of the image is in daylight. The western side, it's night over there, so you don't see anything because there's no sunlight over there. And visible imagery, it's very intuitive. You see the clouds just like you see them standing on the ground, but now you're a satellite seeing them from above. But the problem is, what about the night side of the planet? How do you track the storms? How do you know where the rain is, the snow, the weather, if you can't see the clouds? And that's why, just like a television can change from one channel to another, or a radio can change stations, satellites can change the frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum that they're looking at. We can go to infrared instead of visible light. You know, it's heat energy. You can see heat, and we've got another satellite picture from the same time, same satellite, out over the Pacific Ocean. That's the infrared side, and we're seeing temperature there. And even at night, when there's no light, everything still has a temperature.
So we're sensing something with a thermometer instead of perhaps the visible side of that, is what you're saying?
That's right. On this depiction, colder features are lighter shades, warmer features are dark. And so clouds tend to be colder than the ground. Clouds are higher in the atmosphere, it's cooler. And so that very same image on the western or the left-hand side of the globe, now we can see the clouds there, even though it's nighttime, because we're seeing the temperatures. And one nice feature is that tropical storm there, just in the middle of the northern hemisphere there, hurricane or typhoon, depending on...
That's that swirly part that we see in the middle of the image?
There you go. You can even see the eye on it there, especially in the infrared image. So we've got two kinds of imagery there from the same satellite, different instruments, you know, different channels like on a television, visible and infrared. You know, it turns out there's no one magic tool. Each has its strengths, each has its flaws, weaknesses. The visible is nice, it's intuitive, it's easy to understand, but doesn't work at night. Infrared is nice, it works at night, you can see temperatures, but there is a catch. What if your clouds and the nearby bare ground or open water, what if those were about the same temperature?
Oh, that's going to be hard to figure out what's going on.
If you can only see temperature and you have two features that are the same temperature, they will look the same. You won't be able to tell. They're camouflaged. This happens, especially, it can happen around Alaska, especially over the ocean when you have low clouds that are the same temperature as the open water.
That happens quite a bit in Alaska.
We have an example. Now, this is from a different geostationary satellite. It's down over the Atlantic Ocean. Look in the South Atlantic. In infrared, we've highlighted in a yellow circle there. There's some patches of clouds, but it looks like there's a clear area in the middle of that image. That's the infrared look. But let's take a look at the visible channel, and we can see there's a stripe of clouds across the middle of that circle that is only visible in the visible. The trick here is that those are low clouds of about the same temperature as the surrounding ocean. So from an infrared point of view, where you're seeing temperature, the clouds and the water nearby are the same temperature, they look the same. It's only on the visible that you can see what stands out as the actual imagery.
Okay.
Two tools, each have their strengths and weaknesses. Can we combine them? That's where the day-night band comes in.
Oh, okay.
It's a super sensitive visible sensor that can actually see by moonlight. It can even see the aurora.
Wow.
And in Alaska, we have long winter nights. We can use that day-night band. Here's an example from that storm that blew the Kullik drilling platform ashore near Kodiak Island in December back in 2012. This image is right near when that storm happened, and it's in the middle of the night in December.
This looks like visible imagery.
Looks like daytime imagery. It's amazing. That sensor can take any little bit of moonlight and just make the most of it. We can see so much detail. Even in the northern part of the image there, you can see some aurora up there. The northern lights
That's that band that goes across the Arctic slope?
You got it. That's the northern lights. We're seeing black and white image here, so you don't get the green or the purple colors there. But that is the aurora. There's another example of the day-night band, and this is from January of 2013. It's about 4 in the morning, and this is a snapshot from Weather Service software. And we can even see in the middle of the image, there's the lights of Fairbanks and North Pole over to Eielson Air Force Base. Anchorage and Matsu lights, city lights, are evident as well. We can see, even though it's 4 in the morning in January, there is no sunlight to be had, that just enough moonlight is available that this sensor can see that. So we're trying to solve that puzzle where visible light is good, but only during the daytime. IR is good at night, but you can't see the difference between clouds and ground sometime. The day-night band is an attempt to do the best of both with one tool. And it's brand new for Alaska here, and we're hoping to use it in the forecast process and help predict storms, weather patterns, to help get good forecasts for people.
Okay, another tool in the weather toolkit for meteorologists in Alaska and researchers worldwide. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us today. And you can learn more about Dehne and the day-night band by going to the web address that you see on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back to today's sea ice analysis. Not really much different from yesterday, a little bit more due to the unending southerly winds that have ended today. Ice has pulled off the north shore here of the Seward Peninsula, definitely on the north side of St. Lawrence Island, and the backside's almost right up to the south shore now. And same thing over there on the Russian coast and the western Arctic coast, and that's going to about come to a halt there. Winds have already died off, and then they're going to turn more easterly and begin to increase, and actually midweek or a little after, they're going to turn northeast up here and could see some back to an increase in the sea ice up there then due to the wind direction change. And for the coastal water forecasts, northwest 15 here, or northeast 15 on the south coast, otherwise northwesterlies 10 to 15 for the remainder of the coastline, seas 4 to 6 feet, and north winds back down to 15 knots for Lynn Canal tomorrow with 3-foot seas, northwest 15 Stevens Passage, north 15 Clarence Strait. Even lighter winds, variable at 10 here over the central and southern inside waters, Lynn Canal south 15, north 10 to 15 on the south coast, north-northwest at 15 on the north coast, and those seas down to 4 feet. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, light west winds with slight seas, winds only about 10 knots, northwest 15 here for the eastern North Gulf Coast, west side west 15, light winds out of the northwest for the Barrens right up into Kamishak Bay with 2 to 3 foot seas, west winds for Cook Inlet with seas 1 foot or less. And also on Tuesday, north 10 knots, seas pretty slight here in the inlet right on down to Kamishak Bay, and west 15, 4-foot seas for the Barren Islands into the western North Gulf Coast, northwest 15 there for the eastern North Gulf Coast, and light winds continue for Prince William Sound. East winds 10 knots tomorrow for Kodiak, can't get much lighter than that. Easterlies at 20 from Sitkinak to Castle Cape. And coming up to small craft advisory levels here with 30-knot easterlies on the south side of the peninsula, Bristol Bay east at 20. Outlook for Tuesday, gales, 35 to 40-knot easterlies now for the Alaska Peninsula. Seas building to 18 feet in the Pacific side. East winds 20 for Bristol Bay. Small craft advisories right up to Sitkinak from Castle Cape, and east winds at 10 knots for Kodiak. Eastern Aleutians, east winds 30 knots, seas 7 to 15 feet. East winds 30 knots with 10 to 15 foot seas for Adak and Atka, and east winds 25 to 30 knots for the western Aleutians with 11 foot seas. Outlook for Tuesday, gales pick up a little bit out here, so you get minimum gales out of the east for the western Aleutians, southeast 25 from, say, Kiska to Adak, and then Adak and Atka, east-southeast 25 to 30, and gale warnings for the eastern Aleutians, east-southeast 35 to 40 knots with seas approaching 20 feet south of Unalaska Island. Southwest coast tomorrow, east at 20, with seas running generally 5 feet here. East 20 also for the Pribilofs. Pretty uniform wind pattern here for the eastern Bering Sea from the coast. East 15, St. Lawrence Island. Those pick up a little bit. Northeast winds coming in, as I spoke of earlier. Northeast coming up to about 20 knots. East at 30 here for the southwest coast. 40-knot easterly winds for the Pribilofs and also for St. Matthew Island. And up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, winds 10 to 15 out of the west, light northwest winds on the central coast, maybe even just variable at 10 or less for the central coast tomorrow. Then northeast 15 here on the west side, especially in Point Lay, right on down to Cape Thompson. And then south of Cape Thompson, 5 knots out of the northeast. And then for Tuesday, bring it up to 10 knots there for the Chukchi Sea from Wales up to Cape Thompson. And the northeast winds here are coming around the bend, turn easterly on the western Arctic coast, east at 10 for the central coast, staying pretty light there, and light winds all the way over to demarcation point. So the colder air coming in really isn't accompanied by any big blast of north or northeast or easterly winds up there. And for tonight's weather, again, high pressure, strong high pressure dominating northwest Canada and the interior and the Gulf of Alaska and Panhandle. So no change from what we've been seeing. Mostly clear skies, light winds. Stays a little unsettled here for the Alaska Peninsula. That disturbance spreads moisture up along the southwest coast. Arctic front, light snow, flurries, and rain continues for Adak and Atka through tomorrow. High pressure, no change through Monday here for the interior. Snow lingers on the eastern Arctic coast, and then that front makes a jog to the south here with colder air shoving it down, coming around that Arctic high north of in the Arctic up there. And that'll bring a chance of snow and more clouds, but snow pretty light and just flurries back to the west. Again, increase in wind and rain over the eastern Aleutians Alaska Peninsula.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.